Hi, folks. Canadian Prepper here. Today I'm joined by Matthew Ho, a former Marine Corps officer and State Department official and longtime critic of U.S. foreign policy. He served in Iraq and Afghanistan and later resigned from the State Department in protest over that war. Now, I hope to have Matthew on today to try to decipher what's going on with the situation in Iran and what the possible outcomes of this conflict might be. Matthew, thanks for coming aboard.
Thank you for having me join you.
So, what do you make of Trump's threats now to potentially restart the war? Obviously, there was this rejection of the proposal, which I think many people anticipated. It seems that both sides are very intransigent in terms of what their demands are. Where do you see this heading from here, and what is your timeline of possible escalation in light of the upcoming Trump and Xi Jinping summit?
I think everyone is hoping that Xi is going to serve some role as mediator. And I think many of us suspect that Donald Trump is going to low key or subtly ask for Xi's help because for the Americans, there is no pathway out of this other than essentially declare victory and go home, which would be a great thing for them to do. In terms of restarting this war from the American side, what does that lead to? Another round of 4 or 5 weeks of mass bombings of Iran retaliatory fire, more destruction of critical infrastructure throughout the region, more economic warfare, more political stress among America's allies to get to what point? And one of the things that's really key here, Nate, is something I've never seen before, and I've gone back and I've looked, I've not seen this. The way that both the Pentagon and the CIA communicated via leaks in the last couple of weeks to the largest American media platforms out there, the most reliable media platforms for the national security establishment, the New York Times, CNN, NBC News, and the Washington Post, essentially saying we are on the wrong side of the missile drone ratio here, that the Iranians have missile and drone dominance. Their stocks are still full. Our stocks of missiles are low. The leak that went to the NBC News was about the extent of destruction to American bases throughout the region. 13 bases that had to be evacuated, essentially destroyed, no longer capable of being used by Iranian missile and drone fire. And then this last leak to the Washington Post from the CIA that said the Iran's economy can hold out for months. The idea that Iran's economic collapse is imminent is just not there. And of course, what was left unsaid is that the Iranians can hold out because they have been through this type of thing before, but for our Gulf allies, they cannot hold out. And as well for the American economy, the American public, American political system, it doesn't have the wherewithal to weather this type of economic warfare. And so the fact that those 4 leaks were put out in succession to one another in a seemingly coordinated way between the CIA and the Pentagon. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, this is the CIA and the Pentagon telling the world that the United States is losing this war, that if this war continues, the war is going to be in Iran's favor.
Shalom, call Yahweh Shemir, Shabbat Shem, double honors to the elder apostles and elder bishops of great millstone, even the elders that came before them that taught us truth. Shalom and salutations to all the brothers out for the word of truth and in sincerity the hopeful elect tabernacle of David. I'm the elder Yahshua. I'm back with the WW3 Daily update. And as you can see, even from the inside, Babylon is losing. Listen again.
One another in a seemingly coordinated way between the CIA and the Pentagon. I've never seen anything like this. I mean, this is the CIA and the Pentagon telling the world that the United States is losing this war, that if this war continues, the war is going to be in Iran's favor. So this idea that the Pentagon and CIA putting this out like they did to communicate that in opposition to the president to keep us out of a renewal of this war, it's really quite extraordinary. And I think that tells you what you need to know about the condition of the U.S. military. It's how it's overextended, it's under-resourced, its defense industry base can't provide it with the munitions that it needs to fight a war. So what do you get then if you restart the war? Another 4 weeks before the Americans have to call for a ceasefire because they're on the losing end again.
Second Ezra's 9 and 3 in the GMT. There will be earthquakes, national rebellions, international intrigues, unstable leaders, and confused rulers. When you see these things happening, you will know that they are what God Most High has spoken about since the beginning of creation. So this is what we see right now. Earthquakes. Earthquakes in Iran. Why? Testing nukes. All right, we went over that today. Where was that at? Right here. Were there 4 earthquakes in Iran yesterday? I did this today, earlier. Yes, a series of earthquakes struck the region of East Tehran, Iran, late on Tuesday. Iranian state media reported a total of 9 small earthquakes over the night hours. What could that be? That could be getting that nuke. Zechariah 12. Let's get the nuke out real quick. 14 here. 14:12. It's a lot. What is it? BSB. Berean Standard. Zechariah 14:12. And this will be the plague with which the Lord strikes all the people who have warred against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongue will rot in their mouth, meaning consume away, meaning melt from nuclear fire. Okay, so that this represents a nuclear weapon. Okay, that plague, if you will. And you got to come out of her, my people, so that you receive not of those plagues. This is Rev, what is it, 20, yeah? 20 or 18? 18? Revelation 18:4. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that you receive not of her plague. What plague are we talking about here? The nukes, the nuclear missiles. Of her plagues. What plagues? And this shall be the plague. Zechariah 14:12. And this shall be this plague. Those nukes. Okay, so let's let Matt talk a little more here.
So I think this summit with Trump and Xi is going to be important.
So tomorrow or today, what is it? Today, Wednesday? Today is the Xi meeting. He's going to say that, oh, well, they're going to put Xi in the place of Pakistan because Pakistan was completely ineffective at being a mediator. So now they're going to put Xi, which is what this real war is about. It's about Babylon and Moab. But how do you put Xi in between and call them the mediator?
And if that fails to produce some type of negotiated settlement, I think we're looking at an indefinite ceasefire, some type of modus vivendi is struck between the Iranians and the Americans, that both sides get to declare victory. Both sides can say to their constituencies, their public, we won, and provide X, Y, and Z examples why, and like I said, an indefinite ceasefire, a frozen conflict, a modus vivendi exists in the Gulf that allows for this thing to continue, both sides to declare victory.
And that makes sense with regard to prophecy, because a lull has to take place. They can't just keep barreling towards nuclear war and the hour of temptation not have the spotlight. So there has to be a lull in the war where the the sea hit takes center stage. All right, pursuant to prophecy and the order of prophecy. All right, so just keep that in mind.
And return to full scale war.
So,
So yeah, so I mean, what we're doing, what the daily update is just the next thing. What's going to happen? What happened today? What's going to happen tomorrow? Not into the next 2 weeks, but what happened today? There was a meeting today. And we'll see if Xi gets placed as the mediator.
so whenever I hear a leak from the CIA or any intelligence agency, I always have to ask myself, why is this information being leaked? Is this subterfuge? Is this meant to try to obfuscate the situation for the adversary? It is Trump who appoints the CIA director, isn't it?
Right.
So would they leak information like that without approval from the White House, or would something like that have to be like who, I guess, leaked the information?
Trump leaks everything from Truth Social every night.
Good question. I mean, the idea that you had 4 major leaks like this going to those 4 major media outlets, right, in a seemingly coordinated way. One was on a Monday, one was on a Wednesday, the next one was on a Sunday, etc. Like going like that. That shows that this was directed. Now, who directed it? We don't know. I don't think John Ratcliffe, the director of CIA, would, or Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, because both of those men are fully in on this war. So where would it come from beneath them, or also adjacent to them? What other, could it have come from the Vice President's office? Could it have come from the White House Chief of Staff? I mean, we've seen leaks like that throughout our history. Someone like, say, look back at Dick Cheney. What a voracious leaker he was, and how he was able to use leaks to establish reality, essentially, and then points to those. And then Cheney would point to those leaks as confirming what he was trying.
All right, so that's jargon. I want to know about this tactical nuclear use. Okay, that's what I want to hear about. So let me try to find that. Bear with me.
Tells you everything you need to know right there, right? But certainly there is these ideas, and not just with these leaks and the munition stocks, but overall the whole performance of the American military, the way it's overextended, the fact that we have essentially only 2 or 3 out of 11 aircraft carriers available at any time. Really showing the superficiality. Right, the hollowness of the American military, how the American military can be described as a paper tiger. It doesn't mean we can't kill a lot of people. It doesn't mean we can't bomb a lot of things, destroy a lot, certainly, but to what end? The American military is really good at the tactical and operational levels of war, but the strategic and political levels of war, it's terrible at. And that's factors here. We have people who are tied into that system in some way. Things back to the 20th century, and in this war, we're seeing things firmly established in the 21st century.
Yes.
Opening a front that would shut off Saudi Arabia's 7 million barrels a day of oil exports through the Red Sea. So now the world, rather than the world having an absence of 12 million barrels dominance, to try and force an end to the war this way, right? To escalate it to the point that the Iranians have to de-escalate, that they can't go further. So, I mean, I don't think either of those scenarios are likely. I wouldn't bet a lot of money on either one, but certainly there are possibilities that or there are other things that, who knows, that we could come up with as to how they could be employed.
Well, it seems to me if it was tactically useful for them to use a weapon like that and they knew it would work.
Okay, so
that's what I see essentially as, if this war restarts, the favor being on Iran's side. We're playing chicken right now with the Iranian economy, using the Gulf states' economies, betting that the Iranian economy is going to collapse before the Gulf states fully collapse. I think most people are betting on Iran, including the CIA, as we discussed. But then there's also, too, the reality of that here in the U.S., the idea that the cost of this war is starting to be realized. Look, for decades, Nate, the United States was able to bomb countries with the American public not really feeling the effect, not really with observing any cost. Some of us went to war. Some families absorbed the loss of men and women not coming home. The fiscal costs of the war are kind of nebulous and vague, massively ballooned our debt. But those costs aren't really felt by the American people. They're not tangible, right? Even though they're real. Now, though, we bomb Iran and Spirit Airlines goes out of business, right? And that's just the tip of this all, right? So the idea that the American economy, the American public, the American political system is set up to weather this war is just not there. So now you get to this ask of, okay, then what happens? Donald Trump, for him, maybe it revolves all around the nuclear dust, right? And he feels he can't bow out of this until he does something with the nuclear program, because people will say, well, you're no better than Barack Obama, right? He left it, right? I mean, so maybe somebody comes to Donald Trump and says, Mr. President, we've got these B-61 bombs and their dial yield. And you could dial it back to zero 0.3 kilotons, Mr. President. And you know that Hiroshima bomb was 15 kilotons. So this is a fraction of what we dropped at Hiroshima. And, this bomb will have a limited blast area. There'll be essentially no fallout. Mr. President, we dropped these bombs on Isfahan and Fordo and Natanz, and they're sealed forever. The Iranians are never getting in there. This is a usable nuclear weapon, Mr. President. Barack Obama's presidency, particularly his second term, this idea of a usable nuclear weapon became much more common.
Right.
And you have people who believe it. And now you have a president who very likely would go along with such a thing. So you could see how a nuclear weapon could be used that way. On the other side, for the Israelis, Nate, you have the reality that, say, this war does restart.
They've been trying to drop a bomb and getting stopped. Talk about a nuke, too. All right, the angels are stopping the Israelis they're holding back the four winds right now, because it's on record that they've tried to launch nukes on Iran already.
Same volume and intensity as before. And now you're 4 weeks, 5 weeks into this, and there's no chance of a ceasefire. And the Iranians clearly have established missile and drone dominance over you. And you can't protect your cities. You can't protect Israel because you're running out of interceptors. Well, then we can use a nuclear weapon then to gain dominance, to end the conflict.
And then Iran uses their nuke that they're testing in your face right now, and you fucked up again because you thought they didn't have one, when you know that Russia can give them anything that they want, which is exactly what it says in the scriptures, that they're going to supply them with whatever they need and everybody else with them.
And this is why the Israelis have nuclear weapons. They didn't build their nuclear weapons in the 60s to deter the Soviet Union. They built those nuclear weapons to dominate the Middle East, as well as to give them the Samson option, right? That if anyone tries to overrun us, we'll pull this whole thing down. We'll just destroy everything, right? So why wouldn't the Israelis do that? Why wouldn't the Israelis use them? That's why they have these weapons. This is what their doctrine says that they will do, as well as the fact that anyone who's watched the Israelis, observed them over the last 80 some odd years, especially the last several years, who doubts that they will use a nuclear weapon?
And it right there with this scripture, Revelation 11:14. How soon will this happen? Revelation 11:14, any version, the second woe has passed. Behold, the nukes are coming, Salakia. Revelation 11:14, the second woe has passed. Behold, the third woe is coming shortly. With that, we pray that the elect ratify you, brother.